I never thought I'd be dealing with something like this. A realtor, of all people, marching onto my family's land, acting like she owns the place. This ranch has been in my family for over 120 years. It's more than just property to us. It's history, memories, hard work passed down through generations. So imagine my shock when a complete stranger showed up one afternoon, claiming she had bought it. No warning, no paperwork, just bold demands and a lot of attitude. She didn't just visit once, either. She started trespassing again and again, ignoring my clear boundaries and acting like I was the one out of line. At first, I thought it had to be some huge misunderstanding. Maybe she had the wrong address or was mixed up somehow, but it quickly became clear she was dead serious. She wanted me to sign over everything, the house, the land, the bonds, as if it was just a formality. Her confidence was unreal, and every time I said no, she just pushed harder, even threatening to take legal action. It felt like something out of a bad movie, but it was all happening right here, on my front porch. And just when I thought things couldn't get any crazier, she pulled out something that left me completely speechless. She pulled out a stack of papers, waving them around like they proved everything she was saying. She claimed they were official documents, showing she had purchased the ranch months ago. But when I asked to actually look at them, she got defensive real quick. She only flashed them for a second, not long enough for me to read anything, before stuffing them back into her bag. Right then, I knew something was seriously off. No real buyer acts like that. No real realtor would either, especially not one trying to do things legally. I started asking around town, talking to neighbors, and even a couple of local real estate offices. Nobody had heard anything about my ranch being for sale, because it wasn't. I never listed it, never signed anything, never even talked about selling. And yet, this woman kept showing up, more aggressive each time. She started bringing people with her too, strangers, acting like she was giving them tours of my property. Walking through the fields, pointing at the barns, even stepping up on the porch like she lived there. The more I tried to push back, the more determined she became. It was like she thought as she kept showing up, eventually I'd just give up. But what she did next crossed a line I never expected. One morning, I woke up to the sound of heavy trucks rumbling down the old dirt road that leads up to the ranch. I looked out the window and couldn't believe my eyes. There were movers pulling up, hauling equipment like they were preparing for some kind of big renovation. Right behind them was that same realtor, strutting around like she had already won. I rushed outside, heart pounding, demanding to know what they thought they were doing. She just smiled and said, "It's time for you to leave. This is my property now." I tried to stay calm, but inside I was boiling. I asked again to see any proof, any real documents that backed up her insane claims. Instead of answering, she handed me a crumpled flyer from some sketchy auction house 2 towns over. It advertised land opportunities, but didn't even have my ranch's correct address. None of it made sense. There was no record of any legal sale, no notices, nothing filed with the county. It felt like she was trying to scam her way into stealing everything my family had built for over a century. Meanwhile, some of the workers started poking around the barn, talking like they were measuring for a teardown. I had no idea who had sent them, or if they even knew they were trespassing. But before I could even start calling the sheriff, something even crazier happened right at the front gate. As I was rushing to stop the workers from going any further, I heard shouting coming from the front gate. I turned around and saw a black SUV speeding up the driveway, kicking up clouds of dust. It screeched to a stop, and out jumped a man in a sharp suit, carrying a briefcase. He stormed past me like I wasn't even there, and went straight for the realtor. I couldn't hear what they were saying at first, but their argument got loud fast. From the little I could catch, it sounded like this guy was some sort of investor, and he wasn't happy. He kept waving his arms and pointing at the ranch, yelling about how he had already paid, and demanding to know why the property wasn't cleared out. The realtor's confident act started to crack right there in front of me. She tried calming him down, but he wasn't having it. He looked ready to explode. Meanwhile, the workers froze, unsure what to do. I could tell they were realizing something wasn't right. I pulled out my phone, ready to call the sheriff for real this time. But before I could even dial, the man turned toward me and shouted something that made my stomach drop. It wasn't just the ranch at risk anymore, it was everything I owned, and maybe even my safety. The man pointed straight at me and yelled, "You're being sued for breach of contract." I stood there stunned, the phone slipping a little in my hand. Breach of contract. I had never signed anything, never agreed to sell, never even spoken to anyone about giving up the ranch. Yet here he was, tossing around legal threats like he already had me trapped. The realtor stood off to the side, looking smug again, like she'd thought the game was finally over. Before I could say a word, he pulled out a thick envelope and shoved it into my hands. Inside were pages of what looked like contracts, forged signatures that were supposed to be mine, fake agreements saying I had agreed to sell the ranch for a fraction of its real value. My hands shook as I flipped through them. My name was everywhere, but it wasn't my handwriting. They even had a fake notary stamp on some of the papers to make it look official. Panic started to set in. If they went to court with these documents, even though they were fake, it could take months, maybe years, to fight it. And during that time, they could cause all kinds of damage. I realized then that this wasn't just some greedy realtor trying to push her luck. This was a setup, and I was right in the middle of it. And just when I thought it couldn't get any worse, 2 sheriff's cars rolled up the driveway, lights flashing. The moment those sheriff's cars pulled up, everything froze. The workers dropped their tools, the man with the briefcase stepped back, and even the realtor's fake confidence wavered. 2 deputies got out, hands resting on their belts, scanning the scene like they already knew something was off. One of them, an older guy who had been around town forever, walked straight up to me and asked if I was the property owner. When I said yes, his jaw tightened, and he nodded like he had been expecting this. Turns out, I wasn't the only one the realtor had targeted. In fact, there had been reports over the last few months about her running a real estate scam, forging documents, and tricking investors into buying land she didn't own. The man in the suit, he was one of her victims too. He had paid a huge deposit, thinking he was getting a real deal. When the deputies looked over the forged papers she handed me, they immediately spotted the signs of fraud. Right there in front of everyone, they arrested her for trespassing, fraud, and forgery. She didn't say a word, just stared at the ground while they cuffed her. Turns out, I wasn't the only one the realtor had targeted. In fact, there had been reports over the last few months about her running a real estate scam, forging documents, and tricking investors into buying land she didn't own. The man in the suit, he was one of her victims too. He had paid a huge deposit, thinking he was getting a real deal. When the deputies looked over the forged papers she handed me, they immediately spotted the signs of fraud. Right there in front of everyone, they arrested her for trespassing, fraud, and forgery. She didn't say a word, just stared at the ground while they cuffed her. As they drove her away, I thought it was finally over. But a few days later, I got a call from another investor, someone else who thought they owned part of my ranch. That's when I realized the damage she caused might take a whole lot longer to fix than I ever imagined. The weeks that followed were exhausting. I spent hours talking with lawyers, filing official reports, and making sure my land title was fully secured with the county. Every time the phone rang, I braced myself for another call from someone claiming they had bought a piece of my ranch. It took a lot of paperwork and even more patience, but eventually I was able to clear everything up. The sheriff's department stayed involved, helping track down the full list of people the realtor had scammed. Turns out, she had been running her scheme across several small towns, targeting older properties that looked like they might not have strong legal protection. I had to put up new signs, install cameras, and even add a big chain across the front gate just to keep random visitors from wandering up, still thinking they had a claim. It wasn't easy, but standing my ground protected the ranch my family fought so hard to keep. If there's one thing this whole nightmare taught me, It's that even in a place where everybody knows everybody, you can never be too careful. This ranch is still mine, still standing strong after 120 years, and after everything, it's staying that way.